Coming up next is Dr. Kimberly Taylor. Here's your chance to talk about what matters to you. Although you will receive helpful advice from Dr. Taylor, remember, this is not to be construed as a form of psychotherapy, diagnosis, or treatment, and cannot replace a therapeutic relationship with a mental health professional. You can reach Dr. Taylor by calling 564-1290 or toll free at 866-564-1290. You can also listen live on the internet at drkimtaylorshow.com. So here now is Dr. Kimberly Taylor.
Are you struggling about how to manage digital issues within your own home? Is today's modern technology getting in the way of you being the parent that you need to be? Well, all these electronic devices can be a tool that connects us to our family and friends. It can also distract us from being present within our own families at home and even in touch with ourselves. And what is so true is that parents today, more than ever before, are really being required to find a way to navigate in this tech-savvy world that we have here and to lay a foundation for a healthy relationship with technology with their kids. So with all of this in mind, I have as my guest Dr. WINIFRED Lender, who has just written the book, Parenting in the Digital Age. It's about how to nurture safe, balanced, and connected children and teens. So she is here to really help guide us towards finding that balance and to figure out how to use the devices and the games and the toys and the phones and the computers within our own family with a little more sanity. So if you have a question, I want you to call in today at 564-1290. Or you can send me your questions by email at drkim@drkimtaylorshow.com, and we are going to try to get to those. So I want to welcome Dr. Lender. She is a parent, which is great news because it means that she has firsthand experience with all of these parent struggles around this. And I know for myself that as a parent, it has been a concern in my family, and I know other families, about how can parents find that balance so that we can find a good behavior, not just for our kids, but also for ourselves, because we too also have to role model that type of behavior. So what got you into writing a book about this?
Oh, well, thank you, Kim. I'm happy to be here. And part of what got me interested in writing the book was really self-exploration for myself, because I do have 3 children, the oldest of which is 17, and the youngest of which is 8. So I was exploring and looking for resources and answers for myself. At the same time, in my practice as a psychologist, I had some families coming to me and searching for answers to these same questions.
There is a lot of people out there, and they're struggling about how to set a plan or how to set the boundaries. What is the average time that we are all spending on these great devices and not interacting with others?
Well, it's stunning. Really, it makes you think. A recent study conducted by Kaiser showed that on average, children were spending about 7 to 7.5 hours a day connected to digital devices. Now, they included TV in this. But if you think about it, if kids are in school 6-7 hours a day, and then they're spending about 7.5 hours on digital devices, there's not a lot of time to be spending with family or sports or, very importantly, sleeping. So it is something that's consuming a whole lot of times of our children and teens.
And what are you seeing as the biggest problem with that? I mean, because there's lots of kids that will say, well, if I'm not doing this, then I'll just be bored. So what is the problem with me being on these gadgets or videos or games or TV or phones or computers?
Well, that's a great question. The problem, there are a few problems, and again, it depends on the child. It depends on what they're actually doing on the devices. But clearly, the more time you're spending on the devices, the less time you have to invest with family, invest face-to-face with friends, and engage in sports, be outside, and I would argue just be bored and create something for yourself to do.
Do you know, that sounds good. It sounds like something that my parents might have said to me, that if I'm bored, it means that I'm boring and I better find something to do. But I don't know if that's going to work today, because kids are finding it very exciting to be on these devices. So how do you talk to them about that? It is important to have downtime, alone time, space to create, to have fun, to be by themselves.
Well, it's really all about balance. And part of it is recognizing that digital devices and the internet are a very important part of our lives now and going forward, and not minimizing that, but looking at and really modeling as parents how you can balance that excitement that comes from use of digital devices and being connected to the internet with also the importance of engaging in face-to-face time, alone time, outdoor time, and really creating a balance that works for yourself as a parent to model to the kids, and then really discuss with them and plan with them around what's going to work for them and what's going to work for your family as a whole.
So you're really telling parents to be parents and to set the rules and to set the boundaries. So let's think about how can we help parents, because what I know is that for a lot of parents, they're very anxious about this. They don't know exactly what to do. They haven't exactly had a role model because they didn't grow up with this. So the closest they probably have in some cases would be about TV and how much TV time. So tell us what they would say. What kind of language would they do? What do they need to think about in order to set those boundaries?
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, parents should be empowered to parent around this issue. And you're right, you brought it up. The parents of today really didn't have role models in their own parents about how to parent around these digital issues. So a lot of times they are a little fearful or anxious or feel they can't parent around this because they don't know how to. And I think the take-home message is that they really have the skills as parents to parent around this. And part of it is coming together as a team, who's ever parenting the child, whether it's a father and a mother or two partners or a single parent, and determine what is going to be best for them and the child, and bring the child into it and talk to the child about it. So it's not a one-way conversation, parent dictating to the child what should be done or what needs to be done, but really engaging the child, looking what they like to do, when they use their digital time, what gets done before digital time. A lot of behavioral strategies, the idea that the thing that you like you may save for later on in the day. And constructing all of that and designing what I call a family digital plan.
Mm-hmm. Should there be consequences around all of this also? I mean, if the kids are not listening, if they, still trying to use their phones at night and things like that, should there actually be consequences?
I would argue yes, that just as you parent around other things, you would parent around this topic. And that in your digital family plan with the child or children, you would sit down and design what the expectations are, what the restrictions are, what the consequences are. And those consequences would be designed in there. A lot of stress comes when you don't really have a clear plan, and then you have to decide what to do. Mm-hmm. And if you ask a lot of parents, they'll say, we have a plan. But if you ask the child may not be so clear on it.
Okay, so your central point in this book is really that you want to empower parents to really be able to use their parenting skills that they already have, but to also incorporate this, and that you actually have some points that they can use. You keep using the family digital plan. So tell us a bit about that.
Okay, good. Well, the family digital plan is a plan that is put down on paper, that is developed by a family, that addresses how, when, and where digital technology is used. And all those components are very important. So where is very important. And I really encourage parents to think about where their children and teens are using their digital devices. It doesn't have to be up in their bedroom with the door closed. And I really encourage parents, when they think about a family digital plan, to think about using digital devices in open family spaces. So to really encourage the use in a family room, in the kitchen, places where parents are, or there's a general flow of people. And this is important for a lot of reasons, because it allows you to see how long the instrument is being used. Also, if a child has a reaction to it, you're there and you can note it.
Well, I'm just hearing the screams out there from the kids that are saying, what about my private space? I deserve to have a privacy and to talk to my friends and to not have to do it out in the open. What are you going to say to those?
Well, I would argue that privacy is fine, but there is also a role for having these devices used out in the open. And if we can model that we do our homework, for example, or our work from school or work from the office in a public space, there's no reason why kids can't do that. And a lot of their digital time is really spent doing quote unquote work for school, intermixed with talking to friends and other things. So I would argue that a certain portion should be in those open spaces, and that if there really are some private conversations kids need to have, they can negotiate with parents about going to a private space and having that. But it shouldn't be 7 hours of the day they are locked upstairs in their room with the door closed.
That would really be good as the first step to this plan, is to have it in the open spaces.
Yes, the idea is to really think about having digital devices used in open family spaces.
Okay. And should there be some time around that you say you can only use it from this time or that time? Is that part of the plan too?
Yes. So part of the plan is really deciding where they're going to use it, when they're going to use it, and for how long. So a lot of times parents may negotiate with kids about the fact that when they come home from school, they want to have a snack and they want some digital free time before they start doing homework, for example. So that would all be spelled out.
Okay, we are going to spell out more of this once we come back from our break. If you have a question or an email, you can call us at 564-1290 or email me at drkim@drkimtaylorshow.com. We'll be right back after the break. I'm Kimberly Taylor, and you're listening to KZSB AM 1290.
You are listening to Dr. Kimberly Taylor. You can reach her by calling 564-1290 or toll-free at 866-564-1290.
I am here with Dr. WINIFRED Lender, author of the book, A Practical Guide to Parenting in the Digital Age. So do you need to set more boundaries around the tech devices in your own home, but you really don't know where to start? I have someone here who can answer a lot of those questions. We've been talking about the digital floor plan and why it is important. How does this all fit in with the digital plan for the family? That now we're talking about a floor plan, some kind of a setup to make this all happen. Would you explain that for us?
Sure. So the digital floor plan of your home is very important and comes into play when you think about what the plan is going to be for your family. So we just touched on the fact that you really want to encourage the use of digital devices in open family spaces, not in sort of closed rooms on the second floor of a home. And that's important because you can monitor how long the device is being used. So you're setting your child up for success to use it for the amount of time that you and they have sort of agreed upon. The other important thing is if your child has any reaction to what they're seeing, you're there to sort of witness it and see their mood. Also, this kind of digital floor plan is important because it allows for you to know when the device is being used, and it also encourages for all devices to be charged in a central family location. And that's very key. Because a lot of parents have anxiety because they're never quite sure when the device is being used or where it is. And children can never find their phone or whatever they're looking for, their mobile device. By encouraging all devices to be charged in a central family-like location, I love the kitchen as an idea, you keep track of when the devices are being used, where they are, and you also ensure, very importantly, that they remain being charged in the evening outside of the bedroom. And a lot of research has really shown that just the presence of the digital device or the cell phone next to a child or adolescent's bed really impacts negatively on their sleep. Even if they promise they're not going to use it, having it there really can conjure up some anxiety or some thoughts about friends or the day ahead.
Well, and also it pings through the night if they're getting text messages or any kind of.
Yeah. And they tend to. And exactly. After bedtime, there's a lot of those messages that come in. So even the best-intentioned child who was just going to use it for an alarm clock, it's very hard, as we know as adults, because I know that, to resist that temptation. If you just happen to be awake, resist that temptation to look at it. So part of a digital family plan and the floor plan is really thinking about where all these devices get charged. And I would really encourage parents, too, challenge them to also charge their devices in the evening outside of the bedroom.
Okay, but here I have a question that this all sounds great for us to do for the kids, but do the parents have to be on board and follow the same floor plan? Because that's going to be hard for most of the parents, is because they're going to want to be able to use these devices whenever, and they should or might feel entitled to do that. So do they have to stick to it too? And do both parents have to agree to this plan for it to work within the family?
Good question. Great question. Yes, for the plan to work, I really recommend that those involved in parenting need to be on the same page. And all parents know.
It just kind of helps, doesn't it?
All parents know, yes. Whatever it is, whether it's a toileting issue, whether it's bedtime, you really need the parents in the home or those doing the parenting to be on the same page. So that's very important. Now, it's a very good question, Kim. Do the parents need to be doing the same thing? Parents don't need to be doing the same thing, but the parents do need to be modeling some of what they are preaching. And so by that I mean, if there is a rule, no digital devices at mealtime, parents really should be accountable to that too. And if they're not going to be, they need to explain to the children why they're not going to be. If it's a work-related issue, if there is a sick mother, for example, grandparent of the child, that parent feels they need to have the digital device with them to be able to hear from, they need to talk to the children about why. They can also talk to the children about the fact that they want to change, but it's going to be a process as well. So I don't think the rules in the family digital plan need to be the same clearly for parents and kids, but there needs to be some investigation on the parents' part of what they're modeling for the children.
And that the parents definitely need to be on the same page about what it is that is going to be.
Yes. And if somebody else is doing the parenting, like a babysitter or a grandparent, they also need to be on the same page.
Oh, that's a good point. Because they could get away with a lot if it's not set out clearly with the babysitter or the caretaker.
Exactly. And you really want to set the children up for success. And it is part of a negotiation process, looking at what the child wants, what the parents think is right for now, because it does evolve and change, and arriving at some kind of consensus. And the kids may not be thrilled with it, but it may be something you try and you look at for some time.
So what is the best age really to start this plan? Is there an age that kids are too young or too old? I mean, what if teens have already been doing this and now you're asking them to kind of set this whole new plan and they've had years and years of doing it their way? What do you think is going to happen then? And how do you solve that problem?
Well, starting from the low end, I would say, it's really never too early to start thinking about this, because as we know now, you look down the street, you see very young kids, even in strollers, with their parents' iPhones, trying to play games and do things. So the digital devices are out there and are being used by toddlers. So it's a good time for parents to start thinking about what access they want their kids to have, really sort of from birth on, and how they want to structure that. Now, clearly, as the kids get older, it's a lot easier to develop a plan and to talk to them about what they enjoy doing, where in the house they can do it, when they can do it, and what needs to be done first. I do agree with you. At a certain point, once teens have been doing a certain behavior for a long time, it is harder to change behavior. But we know that it's not impossible to change behavior. And the older your child is, the more important it is to really talk to them about the reasons why. And perhaps what you have found in terms of how when you have a day that's out of balance and you're just at the computer for too long, how that affects your mood, how that affects your sleep and your energy level. So you need to really explain the why to them and try to have them buy into wanting to get some change in their life.
Okay, and that sounds like a really good point, to just share what goes on with you. I would think it would also be good that if you're seeing problems within your kids, that they don't sleep well at night, or they're spending too much time on it, and they're groggy in the morning, they can't wake up and go to school, they can't do their chores and have other responsibilities, or they're slacking in school, that would all be good reasons to bring up to them, is that we're going to limit this, and as soon as you can show us that you're doing better in these areas, we will reconsider how much time you can be on all of these devices.
Yes, absolutely. I think you want to tie the digital use to their performance in general, in terms of their mood, their sleep, their academics, their ability to engage in family activities and other activities.
So it's not just a God-given right that they get to have them whenever they want them. It is and should be seen as a privilege that they earn.
That's very important. Yes,
Okay.
that it is a privilege. It's something that is not given to them, just by virtue of being born, and something they can, earn, and something that parents can decide about and be empowered about.
So there are so many changes, on all of these tech fronts, that how do you keep up with this? And is it really possible to have a plan that goes across the board for all of this, or do you have to allow for a lot of changing and discussion about this?
Well, you want it to be flexible, and you really want to invite discussion on both parts, the parent's part and the child or children's parts, because things do change. The children get older. They may need more time, for example, to do homework, or more time they want to be, conversing or talking with friends. And the idea is to encourage them to come and to discuss, why that is and why they want it, and to be flexible. Also, as new apps emerge, it's important that you develop with your kids a way that they come and they say, this is the app and this is what it does, and present it to you. And that parents, you have a resource like Common Sense Media that they can go to online to research it themselves. They can also challenge their child, for example, to present the app to them, on a weekend and show them the pros and cons, and really try to train your child to be a savvy consumer. So that as the technology changes, you're able to have the plan evolve and change. And the idea is that it's flexible. And as your child gets older, there's more flexibility in the plan. And it's not perhaps as rigorous as it was when the child was younger and just learning to navigate the virtual world.
It's odd because in this sense, it's as if in the past all of this was parent-driven, and that parents knew better and that they could then teach their kids. But the truth is these days, a lot of times the kids know more about all of this, and that it's really the kids teaching the parents or trying to tell the parents that all of these apps or these sites or these devices are okay to use. So that must cause some conflict within the family too. How would you tell people to handle that?
Yes, well, that is a role reversal. And, researchers said we can think about the kids as really the digital natives, that they were born into this world of digital devices and they understand it, whereas the parents are more of the digital immigrants, that it just is not first nature to us. We really have to learn it. It is a role reversal. I think you can capitalize on it in sort of empowering the children that this is something that they are just adept at, and they can really teach the parents and explain to the parents. Doesn't mean that they make the ultimate decisions, but it means that they can inform the parents, and the parents can do some of their own research and make decisions.
Okay, we are going to come back. We're also going to talk about cyberbullying because I think that's a huge issue also that we need to go through. So we are going to be right back with Dr. WINIFRED Linder right after the break. I'm Kimberly Taylor, and you're listening to KZSB AM 1290.
You are listening to Dr. Kimberly Taylor. You can reach her by calling 564-1290 or toll free at 866-564-1290.
I'm here with Dr. WINIFRED Linder, and she has written a very practical book, and so it's called The Practical Guide to Parenting in the Digital Age, here to help parents find some kind of sanity within their own homes. I have an email here, so I thought I'd read that and see what you say about it. It says, Dr. Kim, my husband asked me to write this email. We have 3 boys aged 6, 8, and 14. There's one computer in the house, which is governed by parental control, so she's doing a good job so far. And it's located in the family room. 2 points for her, right?
Yes.
Okay. Where the parents can monitor what the younger ones are viewing. Recently, my husband went into the computer and was alarmed to find inappropriate sexual content in the history. We are doing everything we know to do to prevent this from happening. Our oldest swears it's not him. Is it possible that one of our younger kids is outwitting us? What can we do to prevent this? Sincerely baffled.
Very good question. Very good question. And I would like to point out that the setup is just great the way it's organized.
I know points, right?
Yes,
okay.
many points for that. This is a common problem. One thing to look at is to think about if you have any monitoring or filtering software. It sounds like you were just looking at the history, and everybody can access the history to see what sites have been viewed. But there are steps you can go beyond that, and there's some monitoring software and filtering software. And the difference is the monitoring software will tell you what sites have been visited on what days and for how long. And the filtering software will allow certain sites, for example, to be blocked based on certain words that might be in the search parameter. So part of the issue is sometimes kids inadvertently end up on these sites by inputting certain words that cause a certain site to pop up. And I think this has happened to all of us. So sometimes it can be inadvertent, and it's important that you talk to, it sounds like they're boys, talk to the boys about the fact that sometimes that happens, and it doesn't mean they've done anything wrong, but it's a big virtual world. And the important thing is, since they're right there in the family room, to raise their hand and say, hey, Mom, look what happened. Hey, Dad, look what happened. And start that dialogue, because it's very important that they feel that they can dialogue, that if they land there, they haven't necessarily done anything wrong. That's the first thing to do. And then the second thing to do is to really look at the history in terms of what content these sites have, and is it possible it was inadvertent, and if not, to really talk to the older ones about the fact that they may have an interest in this, but what might be inappropriate about it, and then to also consider getting some monitoring or filtering software. Some good examples are NetNanny, for example, is one. There's also McAfee family of monitoring and filtering software. And there's some, and I can actually get that to you, Kim, and you can put that on the website.
Great.
Some are free and some are cost.
That's great, because I think that parents need that. But what you're also talking about is that trust goes both ways here.
Yes.
That the parents do want to be able to trust the kids, but the kids also need to be able to trust the parents, that if they come up with something and they're having a problem or this is just popping up, that they're willing to talk to their parents about this too.
And part of that is modeling and letting the kids know that you really want to communicate with them, and whatever happens, you're not going to be upset if they really let you know this is what happened and it's making them uncomfortable. And that will be important when we talk about cyberbullying too, to start that communication early.
And I absolutely want to get to that. But my one point that I wanted to make was, in the history, it is going to have the data and the time that this came up, so they can kind of zero in and see who was logged onto the computer at that time.
They should be able to figure that out, particularly if it's out in the open, which is great. They would know who has access to it.
Okay. So the next question really is about the cyberbullying, that it does exist, it is out there. So how would parents start that talk with their kids, and what should parents do about that if they see that it's happening?
Mm-hmm. Well, this is a very important question, and unfortunately, the more time our children and teens spend in the virtual world, the more we see incidences of cyberbullying. Part of the anonymity of the virtual world and the sense of being in a peer group but still being anonymous leads to some of the cyberbullying. And it can be very hurtful. And unfortunately, there are examples of cyberbullying that has led kids to, commit suicide. So it's very serious. And when you start developing your family digital plan, when you start putting on paper exactly what the expectations and rules and consequences are going to be, it's very important to talk about cyberbullying and educate your children about what it is and what it looks like and what it feels like. And in the plan, you really need to put on paper what the expectations are. So how you expect your child to behave when they are online. Mm-hmm. How you expect them to treat others, and then very importantly, what you expect them to do if they feel uncomfortable about how they have been treated online or how somebody else has been. And beyond that, you really need to model what that would look like. So that would be if the child's on the computer, depending on their age. Hopefully you are in the vicinity. They are raising their hand. They're calling mom. They're calling dad. Look at this. I don't like this. Something's off. They don't even need to understand why they don't like it. But the idea that they know what to do when this happens. And if they're not in the vicinity of mom or dad, to know how to let mom or dad know.
Okay. One of the questions I'm thinking about is, in a household where there are a few kids and they're different ages, and some are younger, some are older, does this floor plan change just about whether, like, teenagers, for instance, need to be in the family room or the kitchen doing this? Is there ever a time that you think that it's okay to let the teens have more privacy and have access to these kinds of devices within their own rooms?
Yes. And again, it does change and evolve. And it depends on the child. But the hope is that as the child gets older and parents gain a sense of security with the child's ability to navigate and balance the real and virtual world, the kids will be able to spend time in their room, for example, with digital devices. And again, that's part of the negotiation, part of really knowing your child. And there's no sort of one size fits all. One 15-year-old may be more than ready to use a lot of digital time privately, but another 16-year-old really may not be.
So it could go back to being based on if you see your child being responsible in other areas of their life also, and that you feel like they can manage this, then it is a privilege that then they could perhaps do this and have more time or have more access, things like that.
Absolutely. It evolves and changes, yes.
Okay. Is there such a thing as digital addiction?
Yes. Increasingly, we are finding that there is such a thing as digital addiction, and the symptoms really mirror the symptoms of addiction to other things. So, for example, when people become addicted to digital devices and don't have access to them, they become anxious, they become depressed. Some have even reported that they get shaky, and they have symptoms of withdrawal when they're not able to use it. And there was an interesting study at the University of Maryland where they asked college-age students to part with their digital devices for 24 hours.
And they had withdrawal symptoms.
They had withdrawal symptoms. So it's a real thing. And part of it is knowing your child and looking for these changes in terms of their mood, their sleep patterns, agitation, and really monitoring it. And knowing when enough is enough, because it's very essential. As a parent, you're still the parent. And a child may not be able to balance that for themselves or even be aware of the fact that the digital use is causing that.
All right. So I'm just thinking like a kid here, and I'm thinking, okay, if I can't get access at home, I could go to my friend's house where they don't have this digital floor plan, and I can have all my fun there. So does this mean that if this is instilled at home, that the kids also have to do that at their friends' homes too?
That's a great question. Part of it really depends on the parents and what they negotiate with the child. Clearly, parents have to understand that once their child is out of their home, they really do exercise less control over the situation. So the real goal is to develop the habit in the home, because we know that a lot of behavior is all habitual. And if you can develop that habit for the child in the home and really explain why it's important and sort of instill the value of why they behave this way and why it's so important in your home, there's a greater likelihood that they will also engage in that behavior in somebody else's home. But the degree to which you put that in the contract is really up to you, and the degree to which you can enforce it is also questionable when they're out of your home.
Okay. But the parent could call up and check up on them and see if they are being responsible and accountable, even without the parent watching, and that they could take that into account in the next conversation they have about whether they can increase their privileges.
Yes,
correct?
Yeah. And I think when the invitation comes for a sleepover, if it's a younger child, the parents can put part of the expectation about whether they go or not based on following the rules in their own home.
So I have a question for you. You have 3 kids. How has this plan worked within your own family?
Well, I would say it's a work in progress. It's always evolving, and it's always changing, and it's challenging. I think each of my children, have a different interest in the virtual world, and that sort of affects what we do. But we really do enforce the idea that the digital devices are always charged in a central charging station, never go in the bedrooms at night. And we also enforce that as much as possible, the digital items are used out in the open. So we use our dining room table as a homework table, and we encourage the boys to be there, to be doing their homework. When they get a phone call, sometimes, yes, they will leave. They will go in their room to have that private time. But we try to encourage that family time. And it adds to discussions and laughter, and there's a lot more engagement when they are more present physically where the parents are.
So has this plan been harder for the kids or the parents?
Well, I think it's been a two-way street, and I think it's important that parents understand that any change is going to meet with some resistance, and we know that. We can expect what we call an extinction burst. If all of a sudden you're putting constraints on anybody, they may react to that negatively. But if it's presented the right way and there's give and take, a lot of times kids really like the structure, because a lot of times kids don't like not knowing how much time they're going to get or not knowing how mom and dad are going to react. So it can be very comforting. And I think for parents, there is some anxiety of feeling like we don't really quite know what our expectations are. We're not being clear. So clarifying that in the short run does take more time and effort. But in the long run, I think it can add greater sense of security to the entire family, parents and children.
Great. We're going to take a break here. I'm here with Dr. WINIFRED Linder, author of A Practical Guide to Parenting in the Digital Age. We're going to come back and talk about the 6 most important changes that parents can make now in their family to set up this blueprint for themselves. I'm Kimberly Taylor, and you're listening to KZSB AM 1290.
You are listening to Dr. Kimberly Taylor. You can reach her by calling 564-1290 or toll-free at 866-564-1290.
I'm here with Dr. WINIFRED Linder, and she has a great book here. It's been very helpful, and it's The Practical Guide to Parenting in the Digital Age, really helping families to set up a positive, reinforcing floor plan for all of the digital devices and how to use them, when to use them, how to set boundaries. So in your book, you list 6 most important changes that parents can make now so that they have this digital blueprint that's going to help give them some structure. Could you go through those 6 points for us?
Sure. Well, one of the most important and foundational ones is to actually spell out your digital family plan. And that's something you would write down that really talks about the expectations, restrictions for use, where use will happen, when use will happen, if certain things need to get done before use happens. So that's essential. Something else that's very important is within that digital family plan to think about having a central charging location for digital devices. And this should be habits where kids get used to charging their items there and making sure that the items are removed from the bedroom. So in the evening, it's very important that the items get charged outside of the bedroom. We know that just the presence of the digital device interferes with sleep. So that's important too.
So that's 3. What's 4?
So number 4 is to really encourage the use of digital items in a central family location. And we touched upon that. That's important to really see how long they're using the device, but also to really be present and to interact with them if anything negative happens. And also it really connects the family more because they're going to have to be on the device a lot for homework and for socialization. But if they can sort of be in an area where parents are, that really enhances the parent functioning.
All right, so number 5 I think is very important. I mean, there are so many times you go out to a restaurant, you see the family or friends or partners, couples sitting at a table, and they all have their phones out and they're texting on their phone, but they're not talking to the person in front of them. So tell us about number 5 and why it's so important to ban it from meal tables.
Yes. So number 5 is ban digital devices from the meal table. And really, there's a lot of research that talks about how foundational eating a family meal can be for children's development. And part of it is really having that face-to-face, that eye contact, that discourse, the back and forth discussion. And when you have digital devices at the table, that really is robbed from the whole experience. So removing the digital devices, really being mindful and present with the family is very important. And also in terms of just eating behavior, it's important that you're focused on the meal and talking and not the digital device.
So what you're saying is that there should really be no phone zones within a household.
Yes, well, it's up to the parents, but I'm recommending, yes, they be banned from the bedroom at night and they be banned from the dinner table.
Okay. And that all family members should see this as kind of sacred space, no devices, no phones, that you actually can talk or play a game or do something that you
and the
interact
idea
with the
is
other.
to challenge the whole family to really work towards that goal. And a very important thing also consider is take a digital family vacation where one night after dinner you engage in the old-fashioned games. I have a whole list of these great games we've forgotten about instead of going to the TV or the digital devices.
Okay, and number 6 on here is that parents also need to be looking at their usage and setting a good role model.
Yes, I think that's very important. Parents need to practice what they preach, and clearly the rules don't have to be the same for parents and children, but they need to evaluate their own balance between the virtual and real world, and will be more effective in altering their child's usage if they also investigate their own and make some changes or challenges to their own usage.
Well, and I think what might also be useful is if you think about that parents and children can share the computer and build on a relationship by sharing common interests. And they can use these devices to do that, but at least they're interacting with a parent or their siblings on this. So it's not just an individual exercise all of the time.
No, exactly. It can be very empowering to engage as a family. And when there's a digital device in the presence of the whole family instead of locked away in a room, that's more likely to happen. And to encourage the children to teach the parents to share, and to encourage the parents to see this as a journey where everybody maybe tries to improve the balance in their lives.
And are there any last words of advice for all those parents who are still questioning whether they can implement this?
I think my parting words would be to feel empowered as a parent. And even though the technology is complicated, the parenting around it need not be.
Okay. And the benefits of being able to do this?
Yes, the benefits of being able to do this are immense. And it really can teach your child or teen an important lesson about balancing the real and digital world that can serve them well in their future life.
Okay. I think also that when parents set these kinds of limits, that it also helps the child to set the limits with their friends. Because if the parents are saying, okay, you can't play with these past nines, you're not going to be able to get phones or texts, that the kids then can tell their friends, oh, sorry, my parents won't let me do this. I can't believe they're so lame. But they can blame it on their parents,
yes,
but still be able to set the boundaries with the parents' help of the parents sticking to this.
Absolutely. And those boundaries we know are so important from the way we parent around other things. And the children can absolutely use those as boundaries to tell their friends, but really kids get a sense of security from having those limits, even though they may resist at first. Those limits and those boundaries really do encourage a sense of security that helps them grow.
Okay, so you really are encouraging parents to set up a plan, and whoever is the parent, that all the parents need to be on board, they need to be on the same team, and they need to implement this with all of the kids, and they need to follow along themselves.
Yes.
With the family rules around the digital devices.
That's the goal, and that's the challenge for all of us.
That's the challenge.
It is a challenge. And as I said, at first it may not be easy, but I do think in the long run, it does add a sense of security and really happiness to the entire family.
So you're telling them to stick with it, even if it doesn't work the first time, keep doing it, that eventually that it will.
Yes,
and
that's
everybody
the
will
message.
be a lot happier and a little more sane.
That's the goal. And it really can, these little changes could really change your whole family interaction.
Yes, they might get to know each other a little better.
Exactly.
Imagine that. All right. Well, thank you very much for being with us. I'm going to have all of the info on my website so that they can certainly go to that. Is there any contact information you'd like to leave?
I can give that to you for the website as well.
Great. Well, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
We'll be right back after the break. I'm Kimberly Taylor, and you're listening to KZSB AM 1290. I want to really thank my guest, Dr. WINIFRED Lender, for coming on the show and really sharing her book, which is The Practical Guide to Parenting in the Digital Age. I think that her information is vital for us to be able to parent wisely and to feel like you have a sense of control over some of these devices that are in our homes now. So her contact info will be on my website, and you can certainly reach her through that source. I hope that this show has given you some tips and strategies that are going to help you to set healthy boundaries within your own families and to really see the importance that as parents we need to learn to make peace with all of these devices as they really are here to stay. You can contact me with your comments or questions. Just go to Dr. Kim at drkimtaylorshow.com. And if you have questions and want to speak to me, I'm here next week, next Thursday afternoon, same time, same station, at between 2 and 3, right here at KZSB AM 1290. So until then, remember, nobody else has to change in order for you to get better. And if you want to change things, you must first be willing to look within and change yourself. So stop waiting for others and get on with creating the change you want. And as you do that, others will just have to follow with your lead. See you next Thursday. Have a great week.